Congratulations on the purchase of your Fury 410 decock crossbow. Let's open up the box and we'll start the assembly process. As we get the box open, you'll notice you have your owner's manual pack. Your scope will be right here on top. You'll have several baggies with your crank handle, depending on your cocking mechanism, and quiver hardware and main assembly bolt. Down below will be your arrows, the front end SDS block, and then your quiver will be down there. Let's get this unpackaged and we'll get it put together. Now that we have everything unboxed, you'll see we have our quiver mounting hardware and quiver, our owner's manual pack, we have our SDS block and sentry hanger, we've got our scope, our arrows, and of course our crossbow. To start with, we'll need to mount the SDS block. So flip the bow over for that, and the SDS block will slide right onto the end. There are two small set screws down in the SDS block that hold the sentry bow hanger on. We'll need to take those out because we're going to mount our quiver. Next, you'll take your main assembly bolt, and it comes with two washers. The lock washer goes on first, the flat washer goes on next, and go ahead and put that right in the front of that SDS block. And go ahead and tighten that down as much as you can by hand. And then you'll just take your Allen wrench in this case, you can actually, we've got the set screws out, you can take your sentry bow hanger off if you'd like and get that main assembly bolt good and tight. Put that sentry bow hanger back in. Now you go to your quiver mounting hardware and you'll have two long set screws, and those will go right back into where we took the short set screws out. And again, we're going to put those in as far as we can by hand. And then you snug these up. So you'll take your Picatinny rail and it will go right over the top of those set screws. You've got two nuts, and those will go right down on top of those set screws. You'll be able to put them on a little ways by hand, but they are nylock nuts, and so they won't go in very far. You need to snug them up with a crescent wrench. Now your Picatinny rail is on. We'll take our quiver and mount the quiver bracket to the Picatinny rail. You'll notice a big thumb knob on the back of the bracket. You want to go ahead and back that out until that screw that goes in is flush with the inside of the bracket. Then you can just slide that bracket right onto the Picatinny rail. You'll want to make sure that the front of the quiver isn't sticking out past the front of the sentry bow hanger. So we're good here. So we can go ahead and snug that up. And now the quiver is mounted. We'll flip the bow back over and we'll get the scope mounted. The first thing that you'll want to do on the scope rings, you'll see a nut, and you'll want to loosen those up most of the way out. On this particular bow, for most people, for the proper eye relief, you'll want to leave 2 to 3 slots in the Picatinny rail. So we'll want to mount that front ring probably on the 4th slot in that Picatinny rail. I like to, when I mount that scope, kind of rock it from the left to the right and then pull those brackets out, and you'll feel that scope drop into the grooves on the Picatinny rail. Take those nuts and just go ahead and tighten them down by hand to start with. And those nuts will have a small hole in them, so you can take an Allen wrench and go ahead and put that on. You could use a crescent wrench as well, but you can take that Allen wrench and slide it right in there, in that hole, and you can tighten them down that way as well. And we're good and tightened up now. Let's get the crank handle installed. You'll put the socket end in the end and just slide it forward. You want the knob to line up with the stock, And just tighten it down, slide it in, and you're all set. That completes the assembly of the crossbow.